asked to join us. All right, we've got some folks trickling in. Thank you all for joining us and your interest in the RFP. I'm Nuberchari Goldson, the Program Director for Social Justice, Community Development, and the Environment here at the New York Community Trust Westchester office. I'm joined by my colleague Lauren Perkins and Laura Rossi. And before we begin the substantive part of today's session, I just want to cover a few housekeeping matters. Please remain on mute during the session. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat. We will monitor the chat throughout the session and answer any questions at the end. And we will try to address as many questions as possible. And if we're unable to answer every single question, we will follow up individually by email. Keep in mind that we will not answer questions about specific project ideas during this session. If you have an idea for a project or a program related to this RFP, we strongly encourage you to submit a proposal. This information session is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel, and all registrants will also receive a link to that recording as well as a copy of these presentation slides. So before we dive into the specific RFP, I'd like to just take a minute to provide an overview of community foundations while I have you, of which the New York Community Trust is one. So community foundations are nonprofits and public charities approved as 501c3 organizations. And it's also similar to many of the organizations that are here with us in the Zoom today. The first community foundation was the Cleveland Foundation, and it was established in 1914. And now there are more than 950 community foundations across the country. The New York Community Trust is one of the oldest and largest community foundations in the country, and each community foundation across the country focuses on a specific place or region. The trust is now 102 years old, and its grant-making covers 8 different counties, including New York City's 5 boroughs, Long Island's Nassau and Suffolk counties, and Westchester County, which is what we're focusing on here today. Unlike private foundations, community foundations are place-based and place-focused, so their assets do not come exclusively from one individual or one company. The trust grant-making is made possible by funds from thousands of donors, some living and others through legacies. And as New York's community foundation, the trust's mission is to foster and engage in enduring and innovative philanthropy. This specific request for proposals is issued by the Trust's Westchester office, and it is for projects in Westchester by Westchester residents and organizations. Now, the Westchester office has had a focus on civic engagement since 2024, and we've specifically focused on youth involvement in local government through youth councils, advisory boards, and other mechanisms that create opportunities for young people to engage in decision-making processes, voter engagement efforts, including youth-led voter registration drives, education campaigns, and efforts to increase youth participation in elections, local journalism projects and media literacy initiatives across the county, advocacy campaigns led by young people to raise awareness of issues, mobilize peers, and engage with policymakers at the local, county, state, and our national levels. We've also supported youth-led research and policy analysis to provide recommendation to local officials on topics affecting their communities. And we've also supported community organizing, including petitioning and participation in public forums that address local, county, state, and or national issues. We now have the opportunity to expand our civic engagement work and our reach through a new fund. In 2025, the Trust Westchester office expanded our civic engagement initiative to include adults. As I mentioned before, our money and assets are from a collection of generous New Yorkers, and our expansion to include adult civic engagement is thanks to a new fund, the Democracy Fund, established in 2025. It is a time-bound fund, and it is responsive to our current climate, and it is to be distributed over 5 years. This fund specifically supports initiatives that strengthen civic engagement and democratic participation. It builds to build stronger and civic life, including greater social connectedness and participation in democratic processes. And it also supports initiatives to increase empowerment, helping Westchester individuals and Westchester residents actively shape public life. And it is with this fund in mind that we've developed the specific request for proposals that we are presenting to you today, as this fund will provide the dollars granted through this request for proposals. So the grant amounts and terms. The grants will be awarded in 2027. We foresee the grant amounts to range from $10,000 to $50,000. We foresee the grants to support projects lasting 12, 18, or 24 months. We also foresee releasing additional RFPs through the life of this fund. Our focus on this request for proposals is as follows. Efforts that create opportunities for Westchester residents to drive change in policies or systems that affect their communities and futures. Programs designed to empower individuals and communities to actively shape public life. Programs and projects designed to include in-person components as much as possible, such as discussions, convenings, actions, activities, events, and gatherings. So there are certain eligibility requirements to apply for this request for proposals. If you're a nonprofit, you must be incorporated in New York State and be recognized by the IRS as a tax-exempt 501c3. If you are not a nonprofit, you might be a group of residents, neighbors, or individuals that are coming together for a specific issue. You can definitely use a fiscal sponsor or a funds administrator. And this is a nonprofit that is willing to accept the funds on your behalf in exchange for a fee. If you're applying as an Indigenous nation, you must be recognized by New York State, and municipalities will be considered, but note that priority will be given to residents, nonprofits, and Indigenous nations. If you are eligible, we will give priority to work and projects proposed that include efforts that build trust between Westchester residents through shared decision-making, organizing, or efforts that bring different communities together, efforts to mobilize communities towards specific local change in their neighborhoods, municipalities, or areas, leadership development, training, education designed to strengthen participation in local decision-making processes, protecting voter rights and supporting election integrity, work that focuses on get out the vote activities that educate, motivate, and mobilize residents to register and vote in elections. But note that projects and programs must be nonpartisan. Funding from this RFP will support projects or programs that include activities that encourage informed and inclusive public conversations about local issues, and include activities that support community-led efforts that uphold democratic values such as equity, transparency, accountability, or justice. So what are some components of a strong proposal, and what are we looking for? We will be asking you to submit a narrative, which is a description of an issue or problem that you aim to tackle and how you plan to tackle it. It should also include what you expect to change when the project is complete. When we look at that narrative and that description in your proposal, we expect the proposal to be issue specific. So the proposal should clearly describe how the issue affects your community, how your project or program for which you are seeking funding will address this issue. A strong proposal will also be population specific. So the proposal should clearly identify how the project or program will engage your population. So you have to actually define the population. Another piece of a strong proposal, there are clearly defined activities, and these are clearly articulated in the narrative that you submit to us. So the proposal should be well designed to achieve project goals within that grant period. It should state clear and measurable expected results. It should have activities that are designed to encourage informed and inclusive public conversation about local issues. As you're putting your proposal together, keep in mind that the grant funds can support staff time dedicated to the project, stipends for volunteers working on the project, refreshments, supplies, or other costs associated with hosting an event or a series of events related to the project, or childcare for participants at the event. Keep in mind also that grant funds cannot support partisan projects, general operating support, contributions to capital campaigns, any political advocacy, lobbying, legal actions or litigation, electioneering, capital expenditures, or renewal grant requests. When we are reviewing proposals, here are some of the things that we will be looking for. Are these proposed activities responsive to the RFP? Are the outcomes clear and realistic? Are these activities likely to achieve the desired outcomes that you define? Does the organization or the group of folks have the capacity to carry out these activities? It will clearly state where these activities take place in Westchester. We will look and see whether or not the project centers Westchester residents in voice and in leadership. And if the project is intended to reach a historically underserved population, we will see whether or not the project is led by that group. We'll also take a look and see whether or not the organization or the fiscal sponsor or funds administrator is in solid financial health and has adequate, appropriate governance pieces within the organization. And one of those includes 5 independent board members. In your submission, along with the narrative, you'll also be submitting an organizational budget and a project budget. So what does this mean? An organization budget is the organization's overall financial plan. It typically covers the entire organization for a year. It's usually approved by the board, and it includes all revenue and expenses for the current fiscal year. The trust requires that this budget be submitted to understand an organization's overall financial health. And applicants using a fiscal sponsor or a funds administrator should also provide a board list and operating budget for the entity that you are submitting under. A project budget is more focused. It's a snapshot of the specific project or initiative for which the applicant is requesting the trust funds. And so because this RFP is supporting time-bound projects, the project budget should reflect the full time period that you propose, whether it's 12, 18, or 24 months. So when reviewing the project budgets, we will look for costs that clearly reflect what is needed to carry out the proposed activities that you articulate in your proposal. This includes personnel, stipends, other project expenses. Budgets should also provide a complete and detailed accounting of all anticipated project costs. This includes staff, marketing materials, stipends, supplies. All of those costs should be clearly itemized. Applicants should also show that if there are other project funding sources, let's say other grants or other donations, whether confirmed or projected, you should include that within the submission, because the trust will review the full project budget and we may ask about any gaps or surpluses in the budget itself. Overhead or administrative expenses can be included. Note that up to 20% of project costs can be included as overhead or administrative pieces. And if you are a university or a hospital, you are subject to a 5% cap related to administering a trust grant. If the cost of something is not explained in the project narrative, it should not appear in the budget. Applicants should make sure that all of the itemized costs are mentioned and described in the narrative before we get to the budget. The project budget should request the full cost of the project, not only the amount being requested from the trust, unless the trust would be the only funder. So what will we look for when we're reviewing these project budgets? The project budget should adequately reflect the costs needed to carry out the proposed activities. So personnel, other project expenses, supplies, etc. It should include any funding received or projected from other sources, so other grants or donations. It should include the overhead or administrative expenses that we talked about. Project budgets should not include costs that are not discussed in the narrative. It should only include costs that are covered by a trust grant, unless it's the only funder. I want to say that last part again, just to clarify. So project budgets should not only include costs that are covered by a trust grant unless it's the only project funder. So how to apply? Hopefully by October 29th before 4 p.m., you will use the Trust Grantseeker portal. The website is highlighted here. You will see a selection of different RFPs that you can apply for, and what you are looking for is the one that says Projects to Advance Civic Engagement and Democracy in Westchester. It says here that you can apply until 5 p.m. You can actually only apply until 4 p.m., so we will edit that out. You can also see that you can download specific instructions on the RFP itself. And then on the right of that, you'll see that there's a button to actually apply. And that's where you'll go ahead and you'll submit your project narrative, your budget, and all supporting documents. If you submit by October 29th, we foresee that we will administer the first set of award notifications, either acceptance or declinations, by March 2027, which is our first board meeting in the new year. If you have any additional questions about the RFP, you are welcome to email me at the email highlighted here on the slide, and just include a subject line that says RFP question, just so I know to make sure that I can prioritize that. And with that, I think we can go ahead and we can open up to any Q&A